And welcome back to the very last part of Final Fantasy XII. We've only got one last thing to cover, and that's Trial Mode. Trial Mode kind of does what it says on the tin. It's 100 fights back to back, going through every single significant encounter of the game. Starting from the basic rats you fought in the sewers as Vaan, all the way to all the super bosses in the game. You will fight Yzmat in here, you will fight Omega in here, with the only real unique challenge being on floor 100. I won't show it in this video because, to be honest, I'm not a big fan of what Trial Mode becomes in the later floors. I like what it is in the earlier floors, but later floors it starts to lean a little too much into bullshit, in my opinion. So I'd always struggle with the later ones. But if you decide to push all the way to floor 100, your treat, your secret fight, is that you will fight every single judge in the game together, including the ones that you never get to fight in the main game, because they either ally with you at the last second, like Zargabath did, or left judgehood before the events of the game, or, you know, just died before you got to ever meet them directly. All the judges you will fight at the same time, and it is a pretty fun fight. Brutal. The only way you're getting through that fight is if you're using disease. If you're inflicting disease on them, it's literally the only way, because they will use elixirs and mega elixirs on each other and things like that. But disease, even though elixirs would get rid of disease for you, it doesn't for them, so you still stand a chance. You'll also go through every single major hunt in the game, like you just saw the elite monk hunt the clockatrice, and now we're in the Leviathan, and some encounters, as you just saw there, not all the enemies were dead when it moved on. If there is like a bunch of enemies, if there's one that's like a leader enemy, defeating that will always just end the fight immediately. The biggest reason why you'll want to do all this is because there are several unique items that you can only get or easily get through Trial Mode. You know the Worm Hero Blade I've been telling you about, where you need to get Yzmat defeated, Omega defeated, and every elite mark defeated to get? You can steal the Worm Hero Blade from one of the fights in here. Actually, a few of them you can actually get the Worm Hero Blade. You'll also go through most, if not all, of the Espers. And as you just saw there, but the first 30 to 40 floors, you will just out-level them if you're doing this after you beat the game. They kind of expect you to, like, work your way through this as you go, because you can access this and save on separate files as you go at any point and kind of just continue where you left off. So they expect you to kind of like go on and off with it as you go through. So like the first bunch of floors, don't be surprised if you just one-shot everything. As you just saw there, we just did 17,000 to the poor thing and it was over. Do be careful though in these earlier floors, because it's very easy for your allies to just... Okay, don't know what happened there to the recording. Do you see it? That was... Alright, but because in the earlier floors your teammates are so powerful, you might not be able to get every single item before it's over. Like just there where we didn't even get to look around to see if there was anything to take. So just be wary of that as you go. Look how much damage that did. One hit and the thing's gone. But one hit and it was almost entirely dead. I said early floors are but you can miss out on some pretty nice loot for it, so you just gotta be wary. Also, the floors will at random enforce gimmicks that you've seen Espers use, like you just saw on the previous floor there, it said that your MP would be dropping. All of it is just there to put more pressure on, because I say it is 100 floors of this, and on the other end of this, it's all the super bosses of the game. Fighting Omega on floor 99 is no small feat. Did we ever actually fight the Earth Tyrant? I think that's a rare game enemy. Yeah, I don't think we ever actually fought that thing in the game. Whoops. That's the enemy that can spawn in the thickness of the sandstorm that blocks off the Wester Sand from the Ester Sand in the top bit of the Wester Sand, or the bottom leftish bit of the Ester Sand. You know what I mean, we've gone through it so many times. But that enemy's in there, I think. I don't think we ever actually went back and cleared that out. Not that it matters, but yeah. I think that's tied to a side quest. But I get the floor 20, and I was like, yeah, you get the idea. That's kind of how it works. And so I leave it there. And just play the game's built-in credits, not the credits you get for beating the game. so I can kind of give my resting thoughts, talk about what I want to do beyond here, and just kind of send this project on. I'll try not to repeat myself too much from what I said on the plot finale of this, but I do enjoy this game, but my god does it have some problems, and that was the biggest reason why I wanted to cover this game. Because I wanted to show that there is glimmer here, there is a lot that this game does right, it's just held back by a lot of little things that stop it from really shining. It's an extremely ambitious Final Fantasy that just went through a very troubled development, making a very kind of project. Which is just a shame when that kind of thing happens, because you can see, and with some of the optional content as well, you can really see this was a very ambitious project. They really wanted to put Final Fantasy back on the map, because so many other JRPGs were starting to come out at around this time. We all had Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne at this point. We all had Knights of the Old Republic. We all had like a bunch of Dragon Quest games that were coming out of good regularity. We had Persona on its way, because I think Persona 3 came out like about 6 or 7 months after this came out. Like, we had so many good RPGs, especially JRPGs, during the PlayStation 2 era, that the identity of Final Fantasy being the king of it was starting to lose its meaning. So they went extremely big and bold with it and pushed for absolute ambition with this project to make it the biggest, best Final Fantasy, to cement its place as the king on the map. And although you could definitely see the effort, it stumbled along the way. There was a lot of development issues, and it even resulted in the director of the project leaving before they even finished it. This game could have been so much more if given the chance, and it never got to be. And I don't know what it was that caused the change. Like, I've read things like saying that the reason why Vaan was made the protagonist was because the production team and the advertisement team heavily felt that having Barsh as the protagonist, because originally he was going to be the protagonist, wouldn't pull people in because he was too much of like a hardened older character. It needs to be a young, fresh face on the protagonist for people to want to play it. Or at least that's what they felt, which I think was just the wrong move. But if Barsh was the lead protagonist and the story was altered to not include Vaan and Penelo, and to just be reworked around the board in that sense, this game could have been even more developed and even better. Barsh's struggle is only lightly touched upon, despite it being so fascinating. You only really get some closure with it near the end, and it kind of gets ignored for the most part because of the princess's struggle, which the Ash's struggle, she's an equal character that would absolutely have worked perfectly as a protagonist of this game that just didn't get to be. But the issues of it stopped it from being. Like, I'd love to see the developed versions of this. I'd love to see the original team go back to this and actually remake it and make it the way they always desired it to be. I know it's never going to happen because it's such an obscure thing to do and it's not the most popular Final Fantasy, but the potential this game had that we ended up getting kind of thrown to the wayside is painful to me. That being said, you know who I am at this point. You know I'm a JRPG nut. This probably won't be the very last time I touch a Final Fantasy game. There will be many other Final Fantasy. Almost every Final Fantasy game in the series I'd happily cover one day, but for various reasons I can't. Like I've mentioned before, that Final Fantasy VIII is one that I would love to cover one day, just because it's another one that, although I like, has a lot of problems that I'd want to talk about and discuss. 7's a no-brainer. I'd love to cover 7. I just can't cover 7 on the PS4 version because for some reason they block cutscenes. 9's good, but I would want to do a practice run of it because I haven't touched 9 in years. Final Fantasy IV or Final Fantasy VI, if they ever did like a classic collection that was 1 through 6 and they didn't use like the shitty PC and mobile phone ports of it, I would happily go through. Like if they made Final Fantasy IV the PSP port and put that on current hardware, I'd let's play it almost immediately. I'd drop a lot to play it. But speaking of what I'm going to play next, for the sake of avoiding burnout, as much as I want to cover another JRPG, I might cover something small. There's a couple different ideas I'm playing with, and I'm not exactly sure what I want to settle with directly. And the main reason why is because the SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom remake comes out in June. And so I don't want to put too much time into a project that is going to go over that remake's release. Because if you've been with this channel for a very long time, there was a promise that I made way back in 2015 that anytime I brought up SpongeBob for Bikini Bottom I've made, I said if that game ever got remade, the day it came out, I would play through it like 6 times and then let's play the entire thing. Because it is one of my absolute all-time favourite games, and the fact that it is now actually getting a remake and it is coming out in June, yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen. The day it comes out, you won't get anything from me, because I'll be going through it at least twice. Even if it's a remake and they're adding new things here and there, I know Battle for Bikini Bottom like the back of my hand. It's insane. I know it piece for piece. I know the speedrun strats, I know how to 100% it in a reasonable time. I don't need a walkthrough for anything, I'll always just find everything as I go. It will happen, and I will absolutely record it for you. I'll just want to do 1 or 2 runs to look at the new stuff, to kind of get a feel for it for myself, and then go through it. But then, it's open doors, I'll be let's playing it. So I don't want any project to drag into it. Yeah, I know it's only like the later end of April, so I've got a good month and a half, so any project that's 20 parts or fewer, I can absolutely squeeze in. So that's why I'm kind of still debating myself what I want to cover and what I want to do, because this is excluding the fact that I'm going to be taking a little bit of a break because this project has exhausted me. I love Final Fantasy XII, but my god, this project has worn me dry because it is just what it is. It is that kind of game. It takes a lot of effort to get the recording done, the editing done, make sure I've not missed anything I want to miss, etc, etc. And there's still a hell of a lot in this game I'd never covered. Like, there's a whole bunch of side quests I never touched because the rewards for them aren't worth it in my opinion, so I just didn't bother. Which I know isn't a real completionist mindset, but it's just how it is. It's not fun to watch. A lot of them are quite boring. The only 2 we covered, neither of them are that interesting anyways, only because we get espers on the other side of them that I did them. But that being said, we'll see what we end up with. I'm still deciding what I've ended up with, but we'll see then. But until then, thank you so much for sticking around and watching any of this project with all my ramblings of what I do like about Final Fantasy XII and what I don't. When we next settle down for an actual like turn-based JRPG, it will probably be Dragonstar because I've been wanting to talk about that for a while. But until then, you guys take care now. Peace.